Good morning. It is 16 minutes past 8 o'clock. Thanks for joining us. You're watching Breakfast Television. The Abbotsford Police Department is mourning the loss of Constable Alan Young. The off-duty police officer died from his injuries he suffered trying to break up a disturbance in Nelson, BC. Greg Harper has the story.
We certainly want to extend our deepest condolences to the family, to his wife Kimberly and his daughter Mackenzie, his entire family as they walk this very difficult journey. We know just how tough it is and how the tragedy of this all.
Abbotsford's police chief made a somber announcement on Wednesday morning. Constable Alan Young died on Tuesday night, surrounded by family, colleagues, and friends. The 55-year-old was off duty in the BC interior community of Nelson last week when he tried to break up a disturbance and was critically injured in the process.
We've certainly been in contact with the Nelson Police Department, but anything in regards to questions about that investigation, that we will have to defer to Nelson Police.
Reportedly, Young had approached a man who was causing a disturbance on a Nelson roadway when an altercation took place. A 26-year-old man has been arrested. Abbotsford Police Chief Mike Sear says Constable Young grew up in Scotland. He joined the Royal Navy before he moved to Canada.
In 2000, he joined the Toronto Police Service, and again, in speaking to him, he was, very proud of serving and being a police officer. And we were incredibly fortunate in 2004 to have Constable Alan Young join our Abbey PD family. And immediately, just brought an amazing sense of humor and a smile everywhere he went.
The flags outside Abbotsford Police headquarters have been lowered and will remain in this position until the force has a chance to celebrate the life of Constable Young. The chief says with COVID-19, that'll be a bit of a challenge.
In the next, coming days and week, we'll have a better sense of how we'll honor Alan.
In the meantime, the chief says the force is focused on being there for Young's family and each other. He says the department has learned to deal with tragedy after the death of Constable John Davidson. He was shot and killed while on duty in 2017.
We've walked this journey before, and I pray we never have to walk it again. But we've I think learned over this experience how important it is to support each other, how important it is to ask for help. I like to say that, we talk about, taking a knee, but in this department, we don't take a knee because there's always someone on your left and your right who is holding you up.
Constable Alan Young is survived by his wife and daughter. In Abbotsford, Greg Harper, City News.
8:18 now on BT Vancouver. The federal finance minister is continuing to face calls for his resignation this morning. As Xiao Li reports, Bill Morneau found himself on the hot seat yesterday in connection with pricey family trips and the We charity.
This was a mistake on my behalf. I'm responsible for any expenses that I incur on trips being paid for. This was an expense that I was unaware of, that I did not know had not been paid. And when I found that out over the course of the last
$41,000 expense, you didn't know about a $41,000 expense? How is that even possible?
Stunning revelations as Finance Minister Bill Morneau admits to taking We Charity trips to Kenya and Ecuador, trips that he didn't fully pay for until now.
In review of our records, I understood that there was no charge for these these expenses at the We facilities. And once I found that out, I endeavored to repay that. And of course, it was a mistake on my part, which I take full responsibility for.
The trips happened in 2017, and Morneau says he thought the costs had been paid. But Morneau says he reviewed his records and found over $41,000 was still unaccounted for. The finance minister says he's now paid the money back, but the admission left opposition members stunned.
The average Canadian living in Red Deer or Halifax that goes on a trip would notice if there was say a $400 expense that they didn't pay, maybe a hotel room for a couple of nights that never got charged them, and they paid immediately. But you're telling me that on this obviously very luxurious trip, that $41,000 of expenses happened right under your nose, and you didn't know about it until it suddenly, through an epiphany, came to your attention the very day you were to testify in a parliamentary committee about it.
Morneau says other expenses for the trip were paid, but these costs were missed. But Pierre Poilievre says accepting benefits like this is illegal under the Conflict of Interest Act. Earlier in the day, the committee heard from journalists who have been investigating WE for years. Canada Land's Jesse Brown says, given what he's discovered, it's astonishing that no red flags with WE were raised.
This is an organization that had just laid off the majority, hundreds of its workers. This was an organization that had the entirety, save one individual, of its Canadian board and American boards either resign or were replaced. This was an organization that was in breach of its bank covenants, and this is an organization that was divesting from some of its international development projects. And it was an organization that at the best of times was used to running $60 million in that range of programming. This would be more than 10 times that. So those are the facts.
And there's been another major development in this case. The Prime Minister's office now says Justin Trudeau is available to testify before the Finance Committee on the WE deal, with a date still to be determined. In Ottawa, Xiaoli Li, City News.
The U.S. is reporting more than 1,100 COVID-19 deaths in 24 hours, the highest daily toll since May. That makes it 2 days in a row with over 1,000 fatalities. The country also recorded over 71,000 new infections Wednesday. California has now overtaken New York as the state with the most cases at more than 421,000. The Trump administration has announced $5 billion for nursing homes ravaged by the virus. With terms like physical distancing and quarantini, the COVID-19 pandemic has expanded our vocabulary. Courtney Theriault spells out this story.
I'm just enjoying a quarantini during locktail hour before I jump on a quick Zoom and then mask up for a social distancing party. And hopefully there are no COVIDiots who try to corona-splain. Now, that might actually sound like a foreign language to someone all the way back in February 2020, but in reality, it's part of a significant surge of new words that have arisen during the pandemic.
I've collected around 1,000 terms, but there are even more.
Linguist Tony Thorne has been watching his dictionary expand since March. While the medical community is behind some of the new lingo, like physical distancing, much of it is dreamt up in front of a computer.
Zoom rooms, video furbishing, Zoom bombing, all this new slang, but this is coming from ordinary people, not coming from the medical authorities.
Thorne says major events like wars or Brexit often inspire their own language, but that the pandemic has been churning out new words at a, well, unprecedented rate.
The pandemic vocabulary is slightly different because it really concerns all of us. It's not just young people using slang, it's adults, it's everybody.
But while Drivecation, Isobar, and Morneau may never earn official Scrabble status, they have proven that language is a vital coping tool.
These kind of almost light-hearted terms make it more bearable, and they're also all about solidarity. They're sort of sharing an experience, and maybe one of the most important coping mechanisms we've got.
But it's not all fun and games, with critics arguing that politicians have engaged in confusing doublespeak during the pandemic, treating the situation often more as an election campaign than a health emergency.
It's not just the messages, it's the maneuvers, the tactics, the strategies too.
Still, the long-term effects of corona speak remain to be seen, especially given that we're awash in another prominent word, uncertainty.
A lot of this language we hope, will simply fade away, because of course it's all distressing language, even the funny stuff.
One thing is certain, though, selecting the 2020 word of the year will be a challenge, but Thorne has an early favorite.
Armchair virologist, middle-aged corona-splainer who sits in his home pretending, and lecturing people.
In Edmonton, Courtney Theriault, City News.
Well, as more Canadian cities make face coverings mandatory, Jonathan Muma has more on what you need to know before stepping out in public.
This is going to shut down COVID. Let's do it.
It's just safer to go that way, I don't like anything that's mandatory, so no, I'm against it.
More Canadian cities are making masks mandatory, but the rules can be different depending on where you are, which is why it's important to know what they are before leaving home. In Toronto, masks are mandatory on public transportation and inside shops, grocery stores, and malls.
No matter how much it will help or not help, if it makes other people feel better, then I'm good with it. Like, I don't mind wearing one at all.
Quebec is a rare example where the province has laid down the law, not individual cities. Anyone over the age of 12 anywhere in the province needs to wear a face cover in all indoor public spaces.
And after looking at the video footage of that guy getting arrested in Montreal, if that starts happening here, like, no, that's unacceptable.
Now, here in Calgary, the mandatory masks won't go into effect until August 1st. But when it does, the bylaw will cover all indoor public spaces and vehicles. That includes trains, buses, and taxis.
Nothing is mandatory in Edmonton, but Mayor Don Iveson says he believes it's an issue which should be decided by the province. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney has been a strong supporter of wearing masks, but has never signaled any intention to make them mandatory. Masks are not mandatory in Winnipeg, but the provincial public health officer has not ruled out the possibility. Vancouver has also recommended wearing masks, but again, are not mandatory. Even on BC ferries, which will ask passengers if they have a mask, but won't deny boarding if they don't. And TransLink. Fines for not wearing a mask in places that have made them mandatory vary from a couple $100 to several $1,000s. And that includes businesses caught letting their customers break the rules, with the expectation being they'll put up signs warning masks are required.
I have asthma, so personally I don't like it. And I was also reading about deaf people who have trouble lip reading.
There are exceptions for very young people, for people with medical conditions, at restaurants, and depending on where you work. But they are specific to cities or provinces.
I think people just have to be educated.
One thing that is universal is how you're expected to wear your mask or face covering. It needs to cover your nose, your chin, and of course, your mouth. In Calgary, Jonathan Muma, City News.
All right, some good tips there. Approaching 8:30 now on Breakfast Television. Well, what will they call it? Seattle's new NHL hockey team is set to release its name this morning in about 30 minutes. Our Greg Harper has been following this story. He'll join us live after the break. Stay with us.